it's Mo. It's about 11 o'clock in the afternoon, and or the before noon, I guess, technically. And I woke up at 8 o'clock today, but I am so tired. I have to do work for my work from home job, and I have a lot of other things that I want to accomplish today, but I am exhausted and I feel like I need to go back to sleep for a little while. I thought before I did that I would do something productive at least, and I would do another try a chapter. In December of 2022 I had 3 try a chapters planned, but due to getting sick in December I was only able to complete one of them. I posted another one last month in February, and this month in March I wanted to complete the last of the 12 books that I had picked out in December. This try a chapter is a little bit random. I have a historical fiction, Homegoing by wayyyy. This is a intergenerational story from Ghana. I have Circe, which is a mythic retelling by Madeline Miller about the legend of Circe. I don't really know much more about it. I think Circe was a little bit of like a witch, possibly. Then I have A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. This is a book written in the 90s about the 90s. I think it's a pretty straightforward story about characters and people and their interactions and how they relate to each other. And then I have Black Rabbit Hall by Eve Chase. I honestly have no idea what to expect from this book. I've never heard anything about it. From the very beginning on the back, it seems like this is going to have some speculative elements, some ghosts, but it's hard to tell whether those ghosts are real or imagined. So those are the 4 books that I'm going to try a chapter of today. If you're unfamiliar with a try a chapter, this is a common practice by booktubers to read the first chapter of several books or lots of books depending on what their goal is, and then see if there's a book that they want to continue, a book that they don't want to continue, books that they want to get rid of, that they're happy to have them on their shelves. When I do try chapters, it's mostly to see if I want to keep the books that I'm trying a chapter of. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to read these books right away, although I have done try chapters to help me pick my next read. But these are 4 books that I'm just not sure if I want to keep on my TBR. A Visit from the Goon Squad appeals to me because it's from the 1990s and that's when I was a kid, but there's something about The Visit from the Goon Squad that's off-putting to me, and I don't know if that's just a stigma that I have or if I'll really enjoy this book. So we'll try a chapter to find out. Circe is not really my type of book. It's very chunky and long. It's historical fiction, which I don't really go for, but it is so beloved on BookTube. I want to see if it's something that I want to read. I want to see if it's worth the hype. I read Transcendent Kingdom last year and I really enjoyed it. I read that book on audio and I enjoyed wayyy's writing style a lot, which is why I think I'll like Homegoing, but everything else about Homegoing I don't necessarily think I would like. It is a historical fiction. It's more like family, character driven, and it's supposed to be quite heavy. So I don't know if I'll enjoy this book. It is pretty short, so I definitely want to try it before I get rid of it out of hand. For Black Rabbit Hall by Eve Chase, I picked this up in a little free library. Mostly this was a cover grab. I just thought it was really cute. This is a proof, so I don't know if this is what the actual cover looks like. It is quite long as well, and I must have read the back and thought that it looked interesting. I'm not much of a blurb reader, and if I can't remember the blurb, I'm happy not to do so. I would rather go into almost all books pretty much blind. This one is pretty much a total mystery to me, but it did seem intriguing enough for me to pick it up. Whether it's intriguing enough for me to read it, we'll find out in this video. I think I'm going to start with Black Rabbit Hall just because it's the least well known to me, and so in some ways it's the most enticing. So I will read a chapter of this and then I will get back to you and let you know what I thought of it. I have read the first chapter of Black Rabbit Hall. So there's a prologue that says Amber, the last day of summer holidays, 1969, Cornwall. And then there's chapter 1, which says Lorna, more than 3 decades later. And the prologue is about Amber, I guess, walking to a cliffside and kind of hiding on the cliff. She's supposed to be looking for something, but she's taking a break from looking she's standing on the cliff. She looks down off the cliff. She sees something in the water. And then chapter 1 is Lorna sitting in the car with her fiance, soon-to-be husband, and they are looking in Cornwall for different places where they could hold their wedding ceremony. She is looking for a specific hall that she remembers her mother going to, and as we see this scene unfold, we also see her reminiscing about her mother and how her mother recently died and how that kind of stepped up the preparation for wedding. I did see in the editor's note that this is supposedly like a gothic thriller. So there's definitely probably going to be some kind of mystery. And again, the gothic might refer to actual ghosts and spirits, or it might just be ghosts and spirits from the past. We did meet in the first chapter a like spooky tractor driver who tries to dissuade the young couple from, well, they're not that young, she's 32, from going to this particular venue, saying that it wouldn't be any good for a wedding. So I'm definitely interested. I didn't like want to read on and feel like super compelled to keep reading, but it seemed like the kind of book, contemporary mystery thriller, that would be fine, that I either might like or might not like, knowing my history with contemporary mystery thrillers. It takes place in Cornwall. I enjoy that. I love England. I've been to Cornwall. It's beautiful. It is like 385 pages, but the margins are very large. There's a lot of breaks. There's a lot of short chapters with like lots of space. So I don't think it would be that difficult to get through. So right now, this is a maybe. I also did read the first chapter of Circe. This one was very pretty, it was very beautiful, it was very enticing and a little bit compelling. It definitely made you want to keep reading and find out what happened. But do you want to keep reading for 100? This is about 183 pages too. Is this one really 183 pages? Black Rabbit Hall is 371 pages and Circe's like 385. So even though they both look pretty chunky, they're not that big. Circe definitely, I feel like, has less blank space, smaller margins, but about the same font. So probably fairly easy to get through too, although the language was quite a bit more difficult, and obviously it's a historical fiction, so the subject matter is going to be more about historical things. Circe starts with Circe's birth, who her parentage are, how her father is Helios, the sun god, and how her mother was a nymph, but how Circe is something different. It tells of how Circe's mother kind of captured Helios and said that he could sleep with as many women as he wanted outside of the home, but in the home, Circe's mother was his only companion, and it talked about how Circe's mother wanted to go on and have more children. When Circe was born, the eldest of the children, her mother was disappointed because Helios said that Circe would not be marrying a god, but probably a mortal prince. Circe is not as beautiful or magical or cunning as many of her other siblings and her mother, and she kind of becomes the brunt of the litter even though she is the eldest. She does adore her father, and although he has strange ways, she does dote on him and want to go with him when he goes to see his kind of domains. The first chapter, which was about 12 pages, ends with Circe and her father going to visit his pristine white cattle. And then when they come home, her brother and sister, who are quite cruel to her, tell her something that she doesn't want to know about those cattle and make her very upset. And so we see that the dynamic is that she's quite gullible and adoring of her father, but removed from the bad things in the world to a certain extent and wants to stay that way. The way that the first chapter ends, we definitely know she's not going to stay that way, and trouble and strife are definitely going to befall her. I was really hoping it would be too annoying to read and I wouldn't want to read it and I would be able to unhaul it, but it was pretty beautiful, interesting, and compelling. Similar to Black Rabbit Hall, it didn't make me want to read on to the next chapter immediately. It wasn't compulsively readable that I needed to keep going. But it definitely wasn't necessarily an unhaul either. I think Circe would probably be an amazing one to read on audio if you found the right reader. It reminded me in language a little bit of Piranesi, and I know that Piranesi is written in a way that is supposed to be reminiscent of like Greek tragedies and the idea of Greek gods and that magical, mystical environment. So that makes sense to me. I don't think this book is going to be like Piranesi at all. It did make me think of that. I would love to hear this one maybe read by someone as great as Chiwetel Ejiofor, who read Piranesi, although obviously a woman reader would be better for this one. So far I have no immediate unhauls, but I'm going to read the next two first chapters and then I will let you know how those go. I have read the first, so I didn't read the first chapter of Homegoing. I read the first 6 pages. My intent was to read the first like 15 pages because the first chapter is quite long, but I got 6 pages in and it is as I thought it was. This is just not a book for me. First of all, there's a huge cast of people through lots of different timelines. We start out with the first chapter being about Effia and hear about Effia being born and her struggles with her relationship with her mother and how her father kind of doted on her a little bit, how white men in the 1700s were coming into their village in Ghana and taking the black girls as their wives, which I'm sure is going to come up later, but how Effia's father said that she was going to marry someone from the village, and she's hoping now that she's turning 13 and becoming a woman that she's going to maybe marry the next chief of the village. So it was interesting, it was well written, and it obviously goes throughout the late 1700s to maybe even present day, but I'm not sure. But I'm just not interested in that kind of family saga. I'm not interested in the historical fiction. This one just isn't for me. I read 6 pages, I came to a natural stopping point, and I stopped. And then I read the first chapter of A Visit from the Goon Squad. I thought this book was set and written in the 90s, but actually it is set and written in the early 2000s, which sounds like a very small difference, but actually is a very huge difference. That is when I first moved to New York, and this does take place in New York, so there were some things that were familiar to me and pinging my New York sense. I was only going to read the first about 14 or 15 pages of this, but I ended up reading the whole first chapter, and we follow Sasha as she kind of explains that she is a kleptomaniac, a true kleptomaniac where she takes things for no purpose. She doesn't steal money necessarily, she just steals objects and different things that she sees, and she is unable to stop herself. We start the chapter out on she's out on a random date with a random boy and she steals a woman's wallet, and then we see through kind of flashbacks and explanations that she's been working with a therapist dealing with this, and that the therapist is really hoping that she can be cured, and Sasha is too in a way, but also she's not doing the things that she needs to do to stop being a kleptomaniac. She is not stopping to steal things from various people. This one I liked. I didn't love it, but I would definitely give it more of a try than just the first chapter. So as far as these 4 books go, I think my favorite might have been Visit from the Goon Squad, just because it's contemporary and kind of like literary fiction, which compared to some of these genres is more my style. Then Circe, because it was very beautiful and interesting. I'm not familiar with the myth of Circe, so it made me interested to know what was going to happen. And then Black Rabbit Hall. And I feel like on a different day, these 3 could just change because Black Rabbit Hall is actually my favorite genre of mystery, but the chapter that I read wasn't the most exciting or compelling, and it definitely seemed to be a little bit more of like a domestic mystery or thriller, which isn't my favorite kind of mystery. And then the book that I would not consider reading or not consider reading at this point, Homegoing. I'll definitely be keeping these three and giving them more of a chance. I think I'll probably end up reading this at some point, and now I can put it on my mystery thriller TBR shelf, which is good because I didn't know that before, and it was on my literary fiction shelf, so then it'll make me get to it a little bit sooner. I will be keeping Circe, but I will be maybe keeping my eye out for the audiobook of it and reading that on audio. And I feel like I will also keep A Visit from the Goon Squad on my Lit Fic shelf, and then when I feel like reading a book about the 2000s, I will do so. As far as Homegoing, I'm going to put this on my DNF shelf before fully unhauling it. So I'm gonna put it on my DNF shelf where I usually keep DNFs for 6 months to a year, depending on how I feel, to see if I might want to revisit them. I don't think that's going to happen, and I also think that if I were to revisit this, I would listen to it on audio if the audio was good, but I think probably in a few months when I reassess my DNFs, I will end up unhauling this one. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I've read here. Let me know which ones you enjoyed or which ones you DNF'd. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!